The Formula 2 feature race at Monaco was a total failure from the officials from start to finish, and it might have some big implications for the championship. Hello and welcome, fellow motorsports fans. As you can tell, I am rather upset with the way this Monaco weekend played out on the F2 side, and I'm here to tell you all about it, along with some discussion around all the other feeder series action, my thoughts on the Monaco GP as a whole, and of course some Indy 500 chatter, so let's get straight to it. Formula 3 kicks off our Monaco segment. I usually don't like talking about Monaco too much because of the sheer lack of overtaking opportunities, but there are still a couple things to take away here. A grid penalty for Rafa Camara and a subsequent mega unlucky DNF in the feature brought the entire championship battle a lot closer together again, with Nikola Zolov dominating the feature and Tim Tramnitz just being Mr. Consistent at this point. Then again, Monaco must be the hardest possible track for a rookie, and Camara still did alright individually, so I do think this is very much still his championship to lose at this stage. It was difficult to take away too much from the well-running drivers this weekend, so instead, let's focus on the negatives. Noël Léon finally had an opportunity to score decent points, only to put it in a wall from P6. Now, Prema has of course been shockingly bad this season and none of the drivers have a shot at the title, but this is still the sort of opportunity you can't really afford to miss as a driver. It is mental to see him down in P23 overall with 3 points to his name. And in similar fashion, Charlie Wirtz inherited P6, only to follow into a wall like a lap later. Unlike Léon, Wirtz doesn't even have the bad car excuse, of course. He has comfortably been the most disappointing driver of the season so far, considering I thought he might at least be some sort of dark horse for the title. With two rookie teammates well in the title fight, hanging around P15 with 15 points is unacceptable. And while we're at the negatives, Brando Badoea as one of the worst drivers of the year is also rather shocking. Sure, he has the rookie bonus and is driving for the struggling Prema, but he hasn't even come anywhere near the points at any stage of the season, while Hugo Chukwu and Léon are at least always there or thereabouts. I said in my season preview that I wonder how he'll handle the additional pressure this season, going from a surprise breakout run at Van Amersfoort to joining Prema as a fully fledged McLaren Junior. Well, the answer appears to be not well at all. Shout out to Matthias Stenshorn for the sprint win. Did what he could to finally bring home another good result for High-Tech. The team may be struggling considerably more than expected, but make no mistake, Stenshorn has comfortably been showing Joshua Dufek and Gerard G the way. Then again, that isn't really the tallest task in the world either. Certainly a driver I'd like to see in F2 next season. In F2, Race Control were really taking the piss all Sunday to ruin what could have been a decent feature race. As if it wasn't enough that they didn't let Gabriel Gomez and Ritmo Miata take the restart in their perfectly fine cars, literally deciding the race by releasing the safety car just after the top three of Leo Fornaroli, Sebastian Montoya and Arvid Lindblad had gone past the pit entry was utterly disgraceful to watch. And made even worse by the fact that the race couldn't even be restarted after all. Congrats Jack Crawford, I guess, but that win really means fuck all in context. Like, I get throwing a full safety car for, well, safety, but either it is necessary immediately or you can wait until everybody is equally affected. This made zero sense and really was just a clown show from race direction. Couple of words about the Victor Martin and Alex Dunn incident into turn 1. Listen, the crash itself I didn't even think was that terrible, at least not as bad as a 10-place grid drop suggests, but I'd still say it was a huge individual error by Dunn. Of course, racing drivers want to go and win races, no surprises there, but he should have really adopted a championship-oriented mentality by now, and this certainly wasn't it. Martin beat you off the line, no need to risk it all into turn 1. Yes, it is Monaco, but with a pit stop coming up, there would have even still been a very good chance of him taking the win anyway. And even if that wasn't the case, he obviously isn't fighting Martin for the title anyway. P2 would have still just extended his lead. It really comes back to what we've been talking about all season with Dunn. Guy is absolutely rapid, no doubt about it, but his decision making is super questionable at times and really not looking like a mature driver by any means yet. Because we have talked about him surprisingly little so far, I want to quickly mention Arvid Lindblad. The guy has just been quietly good all season so far and looks very much set for an F1 debut next season. Sure, he also still makes mistakes, as seen in the sprint, but bringing that level of pace on a consistent basis is still mad impressive. I thought he had good chances of winning the feature, if not for the safety car, and subsequent post-race penalty of course. Either way, at this point it really feels like his future is decided anyway, that's why I really haven't felt the need to talk about him too much. Olli Goethe found a bit of a unique way to get a mention here this week, by actually looking super racy during the sprint as the only guy to pull off overtakes at all, and he managed 3 if I counted correctly. Sure, 2 of them put his opponents in the wall, 1 got him penalised, and he also just mugged Dunn while the latter thought he was protected by yellow flags, but still, no small feat around Monaco. And unlike the criticism I just had for Dunn, Goethe is not remotely in the title fight, so I can actually appreciate him taking those risks, getting some screen time and showing that he has got some big balls to work with, even if it was a little dirty. It is Monaco after all, there really is no way to pass cleanly in these cars. Last but not least, a shout out for Kushmaini. Yeah sure, he may be getting outclassed by Crawford all season, but hey, at least he made it count on Saturday. I really struggled to rate Monaco sprint results though. For F1, the big talking point was of course the new approach to making the race worth watching by adding a second mandatory pit stop. And to be honest, I do have to disagree with the broadcast team. I thought it worked alright. Now, granted, it was still a pretty boring motor race, but I think it was still an improvement over the usual one-stop parade. We've got to see some cool teamwork from Williams and VCARB, as well as some rather desperate attempts from Mercedes to cope with the mess they suffered on Saturday. All in all, there were at least some things going on to keep us entertained. Sure, it wasn't a perfect solution, but I believe there can't ever be a perfect solution unless they put the drivers in robust Formula E machinery instead. And for all those believing only the size of the cars are to blame, F3 proves otherwise. I also disagree completely with the idea of forcing specific pit windows, as that would just add another layer of artificially trying to save the race. I think we just have to accept that it is a pure qualifying race, or get rid of it on the calendar, which is never going to happen of course. Either way, let me know how you felt about this slightly different looking Monaco GP down in the comments. Before we get to the American side of things, there is still some important F4 action to cover, and what better place to start than with Italian F4. The Premier F4 series produced a familiar look at the front, with Kean Nakamura-Berta being the man to beat all weekend, and with young Sebastian Vettel as his main rival, until the pair crashed during the final. K&B, who by the way has been dropped by the Alpine Academy, I did get that wrong last time we talked about him, still put in an amazing recovery drive, but just fell short of scoring a point. Either way, 5 wins out of 6 races is still quite the epic look. Unfortunately, Thomas Stolz-Manis lost key points with a DNF in the final as well, missing out on the opportunity to close the gap a little. But truth be told, as much as I love the guy, I doubt he ever was a true title contender anyway. With the 2 favourites wrecking early on, Brazilian star in the making Gabriel Gomez could bag his first win in the series in rather dominant fashion. So far, he is fulfilling the prophecy of taking the fight to Prema, even if not directly on track just yet. Either way, the former Sierra G ace is clearly leading the strong US Racing lineup right now. The rest of the squad has been incredibly unlucky all weekend, with Kabir Anurag never recovering from an unfortunate qualifying, while both Maxim Reim and Lucas Amalisto just could not get a break in the races. Samalisto in particular got caught up in chaos in every single race. He showed good pace, but how much is that really worth if you don't ever convert it into points? Van Amersfoort and RHGP looked a lot like last time out, with Alex Powell notably having a better run. So instead, let's look a bit deeper down the midfield. Gensa is one of the teams with the coolest inter-team battles to watch for my money, because the squad is always on that fringe of barely making the points with their lead cars. And I'm very pleased to see Artem Severyukin continued to deliver consistent results by the looks of it, really maximising what he had to claim P10 in the championship for now. Don't count out Bart Harrison, Inia Frey or Theo Schropp either though. All of these drivers are really likely to come out of this season as underrated prospects if you ask me. And last but not least, a shout out for former karting world champion Kirill Kutskov, scoring twice in the heats despite driving for backmarker outfit Maffa Racing is definitely a performance worth recognizing. But then again, if you've been following the channel for a bit, Kutskov actually being a solid driver shouldn't surprise anyone at this point. In British F4, Fionn McLaughlin was the man of the weekend this time out, fulfilling the prophecy to finally take his first win in the series. To be honest, it almost feels weird it took until race 9. Then again, he was on pole for the first race of the weekend as well, but apparently suffered an incident. Of course, as usual, there wasn't a broadcast to actually let us see that though. I've been pretty vocal that McLaughlin is my championship favourite, and considering he finds himself in the points lead right now, it is all falling into place for the rapid Irishman. To highlight some different drivers this time around, Henry Jocelyn has brought his best form of the year to take 2 podiums, and to be honest, this may well have been the best form I've ever seen him have compared to his somewhat inconsistent sophomore Ginetta Juniors season. Certainly a contender for surprise of the year in the series if you ask me. I love to see that improvement. Talking about Ginetta Junior graduates, last year's champion Mercedes Junior and reigning world karting champion Ethan Jeff Hall has also found his first podium of his single-seater career, sadly in the non-broadcast race 1. He has looked a tiny bit mediocre outside of that so far, but is still scoring points on a consistent basis either way. And even though August Raber is obviously doing rather well for himself, I still don't fully buy that Agenti is actually a super competitive package, so make of that what you will. Definitely expecting more in the future from Jeff Hall as well. And last but not least, Theo Palmer made the most of his second ever outing in an F4 car and scored good points during both regular grid races. Sure, his qualifying certainly was better than the racing, and I wonder if there was some kind of weather-related caveat to that. Nevertheless, a promising start considering most of his opponents had winter series to adjust to the car at the very least, and looking at his XL teammates, he may well have a shot of being the best of the lot. Although, despite his rather scrappy racing this weekend, I still believe Chase Fernandez should occupy that position come the end of the year. In GB4, the main thing to take away is that we can't really read much into this weekend, given it was characterized by rain-related tyre chaos in 2 out of the 3 races. Probably the most noteworthy thing was that the elite motorsport hegemony has been broken this time, even in the normal second race, while Daniel Ginchard went on to dominate the race, allowing him to build a neat little gap in the championship. And deservingly so. I reckon he was probably the best driver over the weekend, even if it was rather difficult to assess this time. French F4 graduate Alex O'Grady finally stepped up to bring home 2 good results, including his maiden win, even if he did struggle in the final race of the weekend for some reason. Before the season, I would have expected him well in the title hunt, not least because KMR is usually a much stronger team than they've been so far this year. And now he has finally been showing that sort of potential, rivaling Ginchard for Man of the Weekend. Definitely hoping to get more of this going forward. 2 shoutouts to end on. First, Luca Magnussen for securing his first podium, albeit only because of the aforementioned tyre gambles. Unfortunately, he was not able to impress at all in the other 2 races really. Second, and much more importantly, Enzo Horman for capitalizing on both tyre gamble races with a podium and a dominant win respectively. Now, don't get fooled by the standings. It took not just the weather but also a win from the back in the reverse grid race to get to where he is now, but nevertheless, that was a really good run, particularly how dominant he secured that final win, especially if we consider that he did run away from teammate Dayton Coulthard to get it. I'll keep it short, but we can't just skip the Ginetta Juniors, as I do need my weekly session of praising Rocco Coronel. The young Dutchman was this close to yet another hat-trick and just about got denied over the line during the last race. And just to have that on the record, that did require multiple safety cars to give Fred Green the chance to go for a move. Left on his own, Coronel was able to gap away no matter if wet or dry. Truly remarkable in the Ginettas and quite reminiscent of Freddie Slater 2 years ago. While the upper half of the grid looked more or less like we've discussed in the past, I do want to highlight Fred Green as a pretty steady second best man on the grid at this point. In my opinion, he's looking considerably more impressive than Alfie Slater, and don't even get me started on the disappointing Scott Lindblom, who really has had a bit of a shocker weekend. And a brief shout out for Josh Watts. Tim Gray Motorsport have been absolutely nowhere all season so far, typically occupying spots outside the top 20 in qualifying with all 4 cars, but Watts has been able to impress in the wet third race with a neat charge up the order, even if it did ultimately end badly for him. Love these sorts of drives to take note of a driver I didn't even know before. I'll be paying a lot closer attention going forward. By the way, was there a stream for the Australian F4 that I just couldn't find? Please do let me know if you know something. It might not be the most competitive series, but at least one worth checking out, I think, unlike its Southeast Asian counterpart. Either way, let's move on to the Indy 500 weekend. The kids in the USF 2000s got their first taste of oval racing this weekend during the Freedom 75, and unfortunately Liam McNeely is still not back on the grid. Apparently he doesn't have budget issues, but rather visa issues, thanks USA I suppose. As is tradition on the ovals, the team packing order was shuffled considerably from the road courses, leaving JHGD with by far the best package for the event. Anthony Matella found himself with a dominant maiden victory, took the lead early on, ran away with it, and also had no issues during the late race restart. In similar fashion, his Aussie teammate Brad Majman had one of the best drives of the day by charging from the back all the way to P3, even if he didn't quite have the tyres left at the end to make it a 1-2. I love how the different track types give other teams' drivers a chance to shine. This series could really do with an additional oval or two if you ask me. Pabst Racing and VRD still brought solid packages as well, leaving Thomas Schrag in the championship lead thanks to a solid drive up to claim P2. Meanwhile, Pabst duo G3 Ageros and Caleb Gaffera wheeled home a solid P4-5 ahead of Teddy Musella. Christian Cameron really was the odd man out, but he kinda has been all season so far. Jack Jeffers probably lost the most. No car to fight with cost him the championship lead here, but he will certainly be back in the mix next time out at Road America to take the fight to Schrag. And it isn't too far gone for McNeely yet either by any means. With 10 races to go, he has all the opportunities to still secure this title if he makes it back on the grid, given just how dominant he has looked so far. Unlike its USF 2000 counterpart, the USF Pro 2000s had a pretty settled race for the Freedom 90, and the order looked a lot more like the road course pecking order as well. A quick look at the championship battle. Ariel Elkin continued the trend he started last time out, took the lead in lap 1 and never looked back to take the win during his oval debut. Alessandro Di Tullio may have had a chance to strike back against Max Garcia by taking P2 here, but has still slipped behind Elkin in the standings now. We really have to appreciate the consistency Garcia brings to the table. Finishing every single race in the top 4 so far is truly remarkable, and a great recipe to win championships, I might add. Mac Clark might be a tad disappointed having to settle for P3 after putting it on pole, but if we look at the big picture, I am rather happy to say that he is also still in the title hunt from P4 overall. And he has also been rather consistent so far if we ignore the messy NOLA round, and he is absolutely dominating his teammates in the process. He may not be on everybody's radar just yet, but he absolutely should be. Last year was truly an anomaly of the worst luck imaginable. The Indy 500 delivered everything the Monaco GP could not, at least after the initial chaos settled down a little bit. Scott McLaughlin, having his very own Isaac Hadjar moment, may have started the race with a bang, but of course the real story has to be Alex Palou finally breaking the curse, winning on an oval for the first time and on the biggest one there is. Brilliantly executed, just how he does on the road courses, and crucially, catching Marcus Ericsson napping to take the lead on track against a car with more fuel to work with. What a drive, what a champion. Alex Palou truly is a legend of the sport. Despite the disappointing end results, Joseph Newgarden very much showed that he is just as dangerous on the ovals as he always has been. No matter how his season has been going so far, Hopefully that should give Palou a slightly more difficult nut to crack going forward. Of course, I can't not talk about Robert Schwartzman's fantastic pole run, the first good Prema performance all year and at the very best possible time. Sure, it didn't go anywhere in the end after the crash on pit road, but up to that point he was actually running better in the race than I had expected as well. To be fair, I never truly believed that Prema could replicate that quali form in the race, considering this is one of the most complex races out there to run from a team point of view. Either way, I'm rather excited to see what they can bring to the table next season and to the other ovals on the calendar. With all the single seat action out of the way, this only leaves us with a quick look at the next generation in our quick weekly karting report. The second round of the IAME Euro Series has taken place and it finally gives me an opportunity to talk about some mini karting again. George House doubled up from round 1, leading nearly every single lap to complete yet another perfect weekend. Definitely the kid to beat this year, it seems. He did have some decent competition from fellow frontrunner Milan Beccio, but the Belgian stood no chance in the last lap duel. And a shout out for George Clark for a solid recovery drive, back up to P7 in the final after an early incident with Austin Newstad. In the juniors, my Swiss boy Dan Allemann finally found himself on the top step of a podium again, rapid all weekend long, although he did need a 5-second penalty for Stig de Rademacher to promote him one last position in the final. Then again, without the penalised move, de Rademacher probably wouldn't have been there in the first place. And I am just happy Allemann didn't get into an incident for once, to be honest. Otherwise, the frontrunner group were the familiar faces of Riley Cranham and Ludwig Granquist, both known vets in the category at this point. Cranham, of course, one of the stars of the year so far. Quick shout out for Finley Lyons. One of last season's stars in the minis is getting better and better in the bigger chassis with a personal best of P4 here. Sure, he did need quite a few penalties ahead to get there, but still solid drive and consistent improvement over the season so far. And in the seniors, last year's junior star Harrison Mackie nailed his first win in the top category in one hell of an intense battle. Truly senior karting at its finest and a deserved lead of the championship for the time being. Reigning champion Danny Caronini did make the most of a poor situation though, climbing well in the mid-race portion to find himself in P4, enough to keep second in the standings for now. One caveat though, a couple of big players were missing this weekend, most notably star driver Ruben Moya as he was busy racing in the US. And one shout out for some female power to end on, Roxanne Lantinga with the best race I've ever seen from her so far, scoring P7 after notably running in the lead group from lights to flag. I can't quite figure out how old she is exactly, but it can't be older than 16, so definitely a promising young driver to keep an eye on going forward. And that was it for the week. Sorry, I haven't had the time to catch up with the SKUs around just yet. I promise we'll talk a bit more about American karting in the future as well. Next week is pretty damn stacked, so lots to look forward to, but for now it is your time to drop all of your opinions and predictions down in the comments so we can get our lovely little discussion going. And otherwise, I thank you all for watching and I do hope to catch you in the next one.